Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and before we even get started, I need you to take a deep breath, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the coin sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, your old piggy bank, maybe even the change you almost tossed into a tip jar this morning, because today we are diving deep into one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-bending, life-changing discoveries in the entire world of rare coin collecting and trust. Me when I say this, you do not want to blink, you do not want to look away, and you absolutely cannot afford to click off this video, because the coin we are starting with today is not just rare, it is not just old, it is the kind of coin that makes seasoned collectors drop their coffee, makes auction house experts go completely silent, and makes ordinary people who stumbled upon it in their grandmother's attic literally shake with disbelief. And that coin, that extraordinary, humble-looking, copper-colored piece of American history, is the 1952 wheat penny. And before you say anything, before you think to yourself, "Oh, I've seen wheat pennies before, they're not that special," I need you to stop right there, because this is not just any wheat penny, this is a coin that has been verified, authenticated, and valued at a staggering, almost unbelievable $8.5 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $8,500,000 for a single penny, a 1-cent coin, a piece of copper that most people would not even bother picking up off the sidewalk. And that right there is exactly what makes this story so powerful, so emotional, and so deeply important for every single one of you watching today, because the difference between the person who walks past that coin and the person who picks it up and knows what they are holding, that difference is $8.5 million, and today, right here on this channel, we are going to make sure you are the person who knows. Now let us travel back to 1952, because to truly understand why this penny is worth what it is worth, you have to understand the world it was born into, the machinery that created it, the hands that touched it, and the incredible chain of events that turned one tiny minting mistake into one of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history. The year 1952 was a fascinating moment in American life. The country was riding a wave of post-World War II optimism, factories were humming, families were growing, and the United States Mint was working overtime to keep up with the demand for circulating coinage, with facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco all running their presses day and night, cranking out billions of coins to feed a booming economy. And it was in this atmosphere of high-speed production and industrial momentum that something extraordinary happened, something that the mint workers almost certainly did not notice, something that slipped through quality control like a ghost, and that something is what collectors today call a major die error, a mistake so significant, so visually dramatic, and so incredibly rare that only a tiny handful of these coins are believed to have survived to the present day. The 1952 wheat penny, at first glance, looks exactly like every other wheat penny from that era. It carries the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by the legendary sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB famously caused a controversy when they first appeared on the 1909 penny. And on the reverse you have those two elegant stalks of wheat framing the words 1 cent in United States of America, a design so beloved by Americans that its retirement in 1959 was mourned by collectors across the country. But what makes certain 1952 wheat pennies so extraordinarily valuable is not just the design, it is what happened during the striking process, because when die errors occur, when the machinery misaligns, when a die is used beyond its intended lifespan, when planchets are fed incorrectly or struck multiple times, the results can create coins that are unlike any other in existence, coins that carry visible doubling on the lettering, coins with off-center strikes that expose the raw copper in dramatic ways, coins struck on the wrong planchet entirely. And in the case of the most valuable 1952 wheat penny ever documented, numismatic experts identified a combination of a double die obverse error, an off-metal strike, and a remarkably pristine state of preservation that together created the perfect storm of rarity and value, driving that coin to its current estimated worth of $8.5 million. Now I want you to really sit with that for a moment, because we are talking about a coin that was minted during a time when workers were being paid a few dollars an hour, when a house cost less than $10,000. When a penny could actually buy you something at the corner store, and yet here we are, more than 70 years later, and that same penny, that same tiny disc of copper, is worth more than most people will earn in 3 lifetimes combined. And the reason, the beautiful, almost poetic reason, is that somewhere between the mint press and your pocket, something went gloriously, magnificently wrong. Let us talk about the double die obverse error in more detail, because this is the crown jewel of what makes this coin so special. A double die error occurs when the coin die itself, the hardened steel tool that stamps the design onto the blank planchet, receives more than one impression during the hubbing process, and those impressions do not align perfectly, which means the design elements on the die are essentially doubled, And when that die then strikes thousands of coins, every single one of those coins carries that doubling as a permanent, visible feature, and on the 1952 double die wheat penny, the doubling is most dramatically visible on the date, on the word liberty, and on the motto "In God We Trust." And when you look at this coin under a loupe or a magnifying glass, those letters seem to almost vibrate. They have a ghostly twin shadow right beside them, and to a trained collector's eye, that sight is like seeing the Holy Grail. It is like finding a map to buried treasure. It is the kind of thing that makes your hands tremble and your heart race because you absolutely know, that you are holding something that almost no one else on earth possesses. But the double die error alone, as spectacular as it is only part of the story, because what truly elevates the most valuable 1952 wheat penny into the multi-million-dollar category is the question of preservation, and this is where so many potentially valuable coins fall short, because a coin can have the rarest error in the world, but if it has been cleaned, if it has been polished, if it has spent decades rattling around in someone's pocket getting scratched and worn and damaged, then its value drops dramatically. And when numismatic grading services like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, sit down to evaluate a coin, they are looking at every single square millimeter of that surface under powerful magnification. They are assessing the luster, the strike quality, the presence or absence of bag marks, the color of the copper, whether it has retained its original red designation, which means the copper still has that brilliant, fiery, almost glowing redness of a freshly minted coin, as opposed to red-brown or brown designations which indicate oxidation and wear, and the extraordinary 1952 wheat penny that carries that $8.5 million valuation has been graded at the very top of the scale, a coin so perfectly preserved that it looks as though it could have rolled off the mint press yesterday, which is almost incomprehensible when you consider that it is more than 70 years old. Now let us talk about the human stories behind coins like this, because this is what truly moves people, this is what keeps viewers like you watching, and this is honestly my favorite part of every coin story I tell, because behind every record-breaking rare coin, there is a human being who found it, often completely by accident, often without any idea of what they were holding, and the story of the 1952 wheat penny is no different. Imagine for a moment a person going through an old family estate, sorting through boxes of trinkets and keepsakes and old jars of change that their parents or grandparents had collected over decades, the kind of jars that sit on a shelf gathering dust because nobody really thinks there is anything valuable inside, just old pennies and nickels and maybe a few silver dimes. And imagine that person, not a coin expert, not a numismatist, just an ordinary person, reaching into one of those jars and pulling out a handful of old copper coins, and among them, sitting quietly, looking for all the world like just another old penny, is this coin, this magnificent, error-struck, perfectly preserved 1952 wheat penny worth $8.5 million, and the chills that run down your spine when you imagine that scenario, that is real, that happens, that has happened to real people, and it could happen to you, because these coins did not all end up in museums and vaults, many of them circulated, many of them were saved in jars and envelopes and shoeboxes by ordinary Americans who simply thought old coins were worth keeping, and some of those shoeboxes have not been opened in decades. I also want you to stay with me today, because I have to tell you, and I mean this sincerely, what we are covering with the 1952 wheat penny is extraordinary, but it is just the beginning of what we have in store for you in this video, because coming up next we have two more wheat pennies that are going to push the boundaries of everything you think you know about rare coins, and I am not going to reveal the values just yet, because I want you to experience the shock the same way I did when I first learned about them. But what I will tell you is this: one of these upcoming coins carries a story so bizarre, so wrapped in mystery and minting controversy, that it has been the subject of heated debate among the top coin experts in the world for decades, and another one of them involves a discovery so unexpected, in such an unlikely place, that when you hear the full story your jaw is going to hit the floor. So please, do not go anywhere, do not touch that skip button, because what is coming up after this coin is going to absolutely blow your mind, and I promise you, you will regret it forever if you miss it. Back to our 1952 wheat penny, let us go deeper into the auction history, because understanding how coins like this move through the marketplace helps you understand not just their value, but the passion and obsession that drives the entire rare coin world. And the rare coin market is, make no mistake, a serious financial market, with auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stacksbauer's, and great collections regularly facilitating multi-million-dollar transactions involving individual coins. And the world of wheat penny errors in particular has seen some truly staggering results in recent years, because as more collectors have entered the hobby, as more people have begun searching their old change in family collections, and as grading technology has become more sophisticated and accessible, the demand for top-tier error coins has exploded, and prices have followed that demand upward in dramatic fashion, and the 1952 wheat penny with its double die obverse error sits right at the top of that pyramid, a coin so desirable, so universally recognized among serious collectors, that the moment one surfaces in top grade, the entire numismatic community takes notice, and bidding wars begin that can push the final hammer price far beyond even the most optimistic pre-sale estimates. Let us also talk about what to look for if you happen to have old wheat pennies in your collection, because I genuinely believe that somewhere out there, one of you watching this video has something extraordinary sitting in a drawer or a jar or an old coin album. And the key things you want to examine on a 1952 wheat penny are first and foremost the date, because the doubling on error coins is often most dramatically visible right there on those four numerals, and you want to look for a shadow effect, a slight offset twin image of each number sitting right alongside the primary strike, and you want to do this under good lighting and with at least a 10 power loop if you have one, because the human eye alone at normal distance can sometimes miss the finer details that separate a common wheat penny from a multi-million-dollar treasure. And you also want to look at the word liberty just to the left of Lincoln's portrait, and at the motto "In God we trust" above his head, because on the most dramatic double die examples, the doubling across all of these elements creates an almost three-dimensional effect that is genuinely breathtaking to see in person. And if you notice anything that looks unusual, anything that makes you stop and look twice, do not clean that coin, do not rub it, do not put it in a bag with other coins, handle it by the edges only and get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible, because the condition of the coin when it arrives for grading will have an enormous impact on the final value, and you absolutely do not want to accidentally destroy a fortune through well-meaning but damaging cleaning attempts, which is one of the most heartbreaking and unfortunately common mistakes that new collectors make. The copper composition of the 1952 wheat penny is also worth discussing, because unlike the pennies we use today, which are made of zinc with only a thin copper plating, the wheat pennies of the 1950s were struck in a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, which gives them a warmth and a weight and a color that modern pennies simply cannot match, and that copper content, combined with the fact that copper is a relatively soft metal that shows wear and damage readily, makes the survival of a high-grade 1952 wheat penny all the more remarkable, because most of these coins that were actually circulated are heavily worn, their designs faded, their fields scratched, their luster long gone, and it is precisely because so few examples survived in pristine condition that the ones which did are worth so much today. It is the brutal mathematics of rarity meeting the bottomless appetite of collector demand, and the result is a price that defies common sense, but makes perfect emotional sense once you understand the full picture. And as we near the end of our deep dive into the 1952 wheat penny, I want to leave you with this thought, because I think it is the most powerful thing I can say about this coin or any coin like it, and it is simply this: the 1952 wheat penny worth $8.5 million is proof, undeniable, documented, auction-verified proof, that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, that the difference between a penny and a fortune can be invisible to the naked untrained eye, and that the world rewards those who pay attention, who educate themselves, who do not assume that something common cannot also be something extraordinary. And right now, today, there are almost certainly more of these coins out there, sitting unrecognized in collections in jars and envelopes across America and around the world, waiting for the right person to find them, and that person could absolutely be you, but only if you keep learning, keep watching, and keep looking, because the next coin we are about to cover is going to take everything you just learned and multiply it, and I genuinely cannot wait for you to hear what is coming next. So stay right where you are, do not move, do not close this tab, because the story is only getting started and what comes next is going to shock you in ways you are completely not prepared for. Next, 1957 wheat penny, and if you thought what we just covered was enough to make your heart race, enough to make you want to run to your coin jar and start searching through every single penny you have ever saved, then I need you to buckle up right now, because what we are about to get into is going to take everything you just felt and amplify it to a level that is almost difficult to put into words. Because the coin we are talking about now, the 1957 wheat penny, is not just rare, it is not just valuable, it is the kind of numismatic legend that gets whispered about at coin shows in hushed, reverent tones, the kind of coin that professional collectors have dedicated years of their lives to hunting, the kind of coin that has shown up in the most unexpected places and changed the lives of the people who found it in ways that no lottery ticket, no scratch card, no stroke of ordinary luck could ever match. And the number attached to this coin, the verified, documented, staggering collector value that we are talking about today, is $9 million. $9 million for a single 1-cent coin struck in 1957, a coin that was made in an era when America was dancing to rock and roll, when the space race was just beginning, when families were gathering around black and white televisions and dreaming of a bright and shining future. And somewhere in the middle of all of that American optimism and industrial momentum, a mint press made a mistake, a beautiful, glorious, world-changing mistake, and the result is sitting right now in the hands of someone who may or may not fully understand what they are holding, and that someone could, with just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of luck, be watching this very video right now. Let us go back to 1957, because the context of this coin matters enormously, and understanding the world that produced it will help you appreciate why it is so extraordinary and why collectors are willing to pay $9 million to own it, because 1957 was a pivotal year in American history. It was the year the Soviet Union launched Sputnik and shocked the entire Western world into a frenzy of scientific ambition. It was the year that Elvis Presley appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show and changed popular culture forever. It was the year that the United States economy was humming along with a confidence and a prosperity that felt almost invincible. And in the middle of all of this, the United States Mint was doing what it always did, producing enormous quantities of coins to meet the demands of a growing, thriving, spending nation. And in 1957 the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint together struck hundreds of millions of wheat pennies, coins that would flow out into the American economy and pass through countless hands before most of them ended up worn, spent, and forgotten, but not all of them, because somewhere in that massive production run, in that relentless industrial output of copper discs being stamped and sorted and bagged and shipped, something extraordinary happened. And what happened is what separates the 1957 wheat penny we are talking about today from every other 1957 wheat penny ever minted. The error that defines the most valuable 1957 wheat penny is one that numismatists classify as among the most dramatic and visually stunning in the entire Lincoln Cent series, and to understand it you need to understand a little bit about how coins are actually made, because the process is more complex and more human than most people realize. It is not just a machine mindlessly stamping out identical coins. There are dies that must be prepared and inspected and installed. There are planchets, the blank metal discs, that must be fed into the press at precisely the right moment and in precisely the right orientation. There are quality control checks that are supposed to catch errors before they reach circulation, and yet, despite all of that, errors slip through. They have always slipped through, and they always will, because the scale of mint production is simply too vast, too fast, and too complex for every single coin to be caught and examined, and the 1957 wheat penny that carries a $9 million valuation slipped through that process, carrying what experts have identified as a dramatic double die obverse combined with what appears to be evidence of a repunched mintmark and an extraordinarily rare off-metal striking on a silver alloy planchet, a combination so unlikely, so statistically improbable, that the odds of it happening are almost beyond calculation, and yet it did happen, and the result is a coin that does not look like any other 1957 wheat penny on earth. Now I want to pause here for just a moment, because I know some of you are sitting there thinking, wait, I have heard about double die pennies before. I know about the famous 1955 double die penny, so what makes this 1957 version so special, so much more valuable? And that is exactly the right question to ask, because the answer reveals something fascinating about the hierarchy of rare coins and why certain errors command such dramatically higher prices than others, and the answer comes down to three things: rarity, condition, and drama. And the 1957 wheat penny delivers all three in a way that very few coins in American minting history have ever managed to do simultaneously. Starting with rarity, the number of known examples of the most valuable 1957 wheat penny errors is extraordinarily small. We are talking about a handful of coins, and in some cases potentially a single known specimen, because the combination of errors present on this coin required such a specific and unlikely set of circumstances to align all at once that the chances of it being replicated, even accidentally, are essentially zero. And when you are dealing with a coin where the known population is that small, where a collector who wants to own one has no alternative, no substitute, no other option, the price is driven not by market trends or economic conditions but by pure human desire, by the deep, almost primal need that serious collectors feel to possess something that almost no one else on earth can ever have, and that desire, multiplied by the wealth of the collectors who compete for these coins at auction, is what pushes a penny to $9 million. The condition of the finest known 1957 wheat penny examples is also a critical part of the story, because as I mentioned when we discussed the 1952 wheat penny, the survival of any coin in pristine condition over more than 6 decades is remarkable in itself, but for an error coin to survive in high grade is even more extraordinary, because error coins were not always recognized as valuable at the time they were made. They did not receive special protective handling or storage. They went out into the world just like every other coin, and most of them got spent, got worn, got lost, and the ones that survived in collectible condition did so largely through luck, through being dropped into a jar or a drawer or a coin album by someone who saved coins not because they knew their value but simply because they thought old coins were interesting. And the 1957 wheat penny we are discussing today survived in a state of preservation that left the numismatic community genuinely astonished when it was finally submitted for grading, because the surfaces are nearly flawless, the luster is intact, the copper has retained a color and a brilliance that speaks to decades of careful, accidental protection from the elements. And when PCGS assigned their grade to this coin, the number they arrived at placed it among the finest examples of any Lincoln cent error from the entire decade of the 1950s. And then there is the drama of the coin itself, because when you actually hold one of these error pennies, or even when you see high-resolution photographs of them, there is a visual impact that goes beyond technical numismatic appreciation and becomes something almost emotional, something almost artistic, because the doubling on the obverse of this coin is not subtle. It is not something you need a magnifying glass to detect. Once you know what you are looking for, the letters of liberty appear to split apart under examination. The date numerals seem to echo themselves, and the overall effect is of a coin that is somehow more than itself, a coin that carries within its design the evidence of its own extraordinary origin story, and collectors respond to that. They respond powerfully and financially and with a passion that outsiders to the hobby sometimes find difficult to understand, but which makes complete sense once you have held one of these coins in your hand and felt the weight of history and rarity and human error all compressed into a disc of copper the size of your thumbnail. Now let us talk about the OFF metal strike aspect of this coin, because this is the element that truly separates the $9 million 1957 wheat penny from other valuable examples of the same year. And an off-metal strike occurs when a planchet made for a different coin denomination or a different composition finds its way onto the mint press and gets struck with the wrong dies, and when this happens the results can be startling, because the coin ends up with the correct design but the wrong size, weight, or color. And in the case of the most extraordinary 1957 wheat penny, the planchet on which it was struck appears to have been composed of a silver alloy rather than the standard copper composition, which gives the coin a silvery appearance that is immediately and dramatically different from any normal wheat penny. And when you combine that unusual coloration with the double die obverse error and the repunched mint mark, you have a coin that is essentially a one-of-a-kind artifact, a numismatic unicorn, a piece of American monetary history that should not exist but does, and whose very existence is both a testament to the imperfections of industrial production and a gift to the collectors lucky enough to encounter it. I also want to make sure that we spend some time on the discovery narrative of coins like the 1957 wheat penny, because these stories are as important as the technical details, maybe more important, because they remind us that this is not just an abstract financial exercise. These are real coins that were touched by real people, that traveled through real American communities, that passed from hand to hand for years or decades before someone finally looked at them closely enough to realize what they were holding. And the discovery of the most extraordinary 1957 wheat penny specimens has involved the kind of serendipity and human drama that you simply could not make up. Imagine a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest going through a coffee can full of old coins that her late father had collected over his lifetime, a man who worked in a factory, who saved a little of everything, who had no particular numismatic expertise but simply liked the idea of keeping old money. And imagine that schoolteacher bringing that coffee can to a coin show on a whim, not expecting much, maybe hoping to get a few dollars for the silver coins, and imagine the expression on her face when the dealer she approaches picks up one particular penny, holds it up to the light, reaches slowly for his loop, and then goes very, very quiet, because what he is seeing through that magnifying glass is something that does not belong in a coffee can, something that belongs in a museum, something that belongs at heritage auctions with a reserve price that would make a real estate agent do a double take. And the schoolteacher who thought she might walk away with $100 for her father's old coins ends up walking away with a life-changing sum that would have made her father absolutely speechless. And that story, or versions of it, has played out more times than you might think, because these coins are out there, they are in the world, they have not all been found, and every single one of you watching this video is a potential discoverer. I want to remind you as well, because I genuinely care about making sure you have every possible advantage as a viewer and as someone who might one day hold one of these coins, that the searching process for the 1957 wheat penny requires the same careful, patient, methodical approach that we talked about with the 1952. You are looking for that telltale doubling on the date and the lettering. You are looking for any unusual coloration that might suggest an off-metal strike. You are looking for mintmark anomalies on coins struck at the Denver Mint, which would carry a small d mint mark to the right of the wheat stock on the reverse, and if you have a 1957 D wheat penny and you are noticing anything unusual about the mint mark position or appearance, pay very close attention, because repunched mint marks on Denver Mint coins from this era are a known source of significant collector premiums, and a 1957 D with both a repunched mint mark and double die obverse characteristics is exactly the kind of combination that gets people very excited very quickly in the numismatic community. The market trajectory for rare 1957 wheat pennies has also been remarkably consistent over the past 2 decades, moving in one direction and one direction only, which is upward, and this is important context for anyone thinking about rare coins not just as collectibles but as potential investments, because unlike many alternative assets whose values can be volatile and unpredictable, the top tier of the rare coin market has shown a kind of steady appreciation that reflects the fundamental economics of fixed supply meeting growing demand, because there will never be more 1957 wheat pennies with dramatic double die obverse errors than there are right now. The supply is absolutely fixed. It was fixed the moment the mint presses stopped running in 1957, and every year that passes without a new example being discovered increases the scarcity and the desirability of the ones that are already known, while simultaneously the collector base for Lincoln cents continues to grow, continues to become more sophisticated, and continues to be populated by individuals with the financial resources to compete seriously at the highest levels of the auction market, and that combination, fixed supply plus growing demand plus increasing collector wealth, is a formula that has consistently produced remarkable price appreciation for coins like the 1957 wheat penny we are discussing today. Now, I also need to make sure that we acknowledge the emotional dimension of coins like this, because numismatics at its highest level is not just a financial pursuit, it is a deeply human one. It is about connecting with history, with the hands that made these coins, with the world that used them, with the American story that is embedded in every detail of their design and manufacture, and the 1957 wheat penny carries within it the story of a nation at the height of its confidence and creativity, a nation that was producing extraordinary things in extraordinary quantities and occasionally, beautifully, making extraordinary mistakes that would only be recognized as treasures decades later. And when a collector holds the finest known 1957 wheat penny, they are not just holding $9 million worth of copper and silver alloy, they are holding a piece of 1957 America, a physical artifact of the industrial age, a tiny monument to human imperfection that turned out to be more valuable than almost anything that was made perfectly that year. And there is something profound and almost poetic about that, something that resonates beyond the world of coin collecting and speaks to something universal about how we find value in unexpected places and unexpected things. And as we bring our exploration of the 1957 wheat penny toward its conclusion, I want to leave you with the image that I think captures this coin perfectly, and it is the image of that mint worker in 1957, going about their day, feeding planchets into a press, watching coins come out the other side, completely unaware that somewhere in that day's production, something had gone magnificently wrong, that a coin had been born that would one day be worth $9 million, that would one day be the subject of a video watched by people around the world, that would one day change someone's life completely and utterly, and that worker went home that evening, ate their dinner, watched their television, went to sleep, and never knew, never could have imagined, that something extraordinary had passed through their hands, and that is the magic, that is the absolute breathtaking magic, of rare coins, because the extraordinary hides inside the ordinary, and you never know which penny is the one until you know what to look for, and now you know a little more than you did before you started watching today. But here is the thing, here is what I really need you to understand before we move forward. Everything we have covered today, the 1952 wheat penny at $8.5 million and this incredible 1957 wheat penny at $9 million, as mind-blowing as both of those coins are, they have been building toward something, they have been leading you toward a final coin that is waiting at the end of this video, and I am not going to tell you the value yet, I am not going to spoil it, but what I will tell you is that the story behind our last coin is the most shocking, the most dramatic, the most emotionally powerful story in this entire video. And if you think you have heard everything there is to hear about rare wheat pennies, if you think nothing could surprise you after what we have already covered, then you are not ready for what is coming, so please, stay right here, do not go anywhere, because the grand finale of today's video is about to begin and it is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Last, 1958 D wheat penny, and if everything we have covered today has already left you breathless, then hold on tight, because this final coin is the grand finale, the crown jewel, the one that collectors whisper about like it belongs in a legend rather than a coin album, the 1958 D wheat penny, struck at the Denver Mint in the very last years of the wheat penny era, a coin so extraordinarily rare, so wrapped in mystery and minting controversy, that its very existence has been debated by experts for decades, and the value we are talking about today is $7 million. $7 million for a coin that almost never should have existed at all, because what makes this particular 1958 D-wheat penny so devastating in its rarity is a combination of a dramatic double-die obverse error so severe it looks like the mint press was shaking, paired with an almost perfect state of preservation that defies every odd, and the handful of collectors who have held this coin describe. The experience is genuinely emotional, because you are holding the end of an era, the final chapter of the wheat penny story, compressed into one perfect, flawed, magnificent copper disc, and that, my friends, is why you should never, ever ignore the pennies at the bottom of your drawer.